Hey there, Legal Tea listeners. This is your host, Jenny Roselle. Welcome back for another episode today. Today is a current trends topic where we talk about things going on currently that are relevant and pertinent to my estate and elder law world, and or maybe they're things I've seen on the news or social media that are just pertinent. So on today's current trends episode, we're going to talk about something that has been recently released about the very, very famous actress and model Sharon Stone, who back in 2001 suffered a major and tragic medical event, a stroke that resulted in a brain bleed. There are now reports surfacing that during that time and recovery, Sharon said she was, quote, taken advantage of and lost approximately $18 million. So that's what today's episode is about. And I'm going to first go into what is being reported about what happened with Sharon Stone. And then I will wrap the episode up with some of my general thoughts as an estate and elder law attorney who routinely helps folks as they age and possibly suffer health events like Sharon did. As you may have heard me mention a few seconds ago, Sharon had a stroke that resulted in a brain bleed over 20 years ago, specifically in 2001. She was recently interviewed by The Hollywood Reporter, where she talked about the terrifying medical event and recovery. In the interview, she shared, quote, "Everything changed. My sense of smell, my sight, my touch. I couldn't read for a couple of years. A lot of people thought I was going to die." Now, she further shared that it took her 7 years to recover, and immediately after the stroke and brain bleed, as well as the time after the recovery, people took advantage of her over that time. She continued, quote, "I had $18 million saved because of all my success, but when I got back into my bank account, it was all gone. Everything was in other people's names," end quote. Now, that was all reported through an article on CNN, but based around the interview she did was when she was interviewed by The Hollywood Reporter. And you see, when I first started researching for this episode, I stumbled across that CNN article first. Basically, what I just reported is all the article really said. So then I went and checked out the Hollywood Reporter article, and wow. The article was not just about the stroke, but there was a section of the interview that did talk about it, and it definitely went into things a bit more deep. For example, the interviewer asked Sharon the following prompt. Quote, "Can we talk about your stroke in 2001? You were given a 1% chance of survival. You lost hearing in one ear. You had 23 platinum coils surgically implanted in your brain. And in the middle of it all, there was the divorce from your husband at the time, Phil Bronstein," end quote. And her response was kind of peculiar. It was short and sweet. And she said, "That was the good part. That was the upside," end quote. And reading that, I'm not sure if she was referring to the divorce or what, but that was her response. And after that question, the interviewer jumped into Sharon's recovery post-stroke and brain bleed. And that's when Sharon brought up the missing $18 million. And it was almost brought up, in my opinion, kind of semi-casually, or at least that's how I read it. The interviewer asked, quote, "So you were left completely broke?" And Sharon responded, "I had zero money." Then the interviewer said, "How do you recover from that?" And Sharon said, "I decided to stay present and let go. I decided not to hang on to being sick or to any bitterness or anger. If you bite into the seed of bitterness, it never leaves you. But if you hold faith, even if that faith is the size of a mustard seed, you will survive. So I live for joy now. I live for purpose," end quote. Wow, talk about an immense amount of healing, right? And that really was the extent of the interview, guys. Most of the articles I found, whether it was, Market Watch or New York Post or Business Insider or Yahoo or Fox News, They all did articles about Sharon's missing money, but it was based off this Hollywood Reporter interview. And I couldn't find any additional information to report, honestly, beyond what Sharon said herself in this interview. And, I'm not sure really how to say this, but to me, it is weird that so far we're just going to let this be reported and not do anything about it. I mean, $18 million just missing, and we're just okay with it. And then, just maybe Sharon has, come to terms with it and wants to move on. And if that's the case, maybe I shouldn't care and kind of just so be it. I just think more details would be helpful to better understand if she was truly taken advantage of. And if so, what happened and how do we prevent it? Or, maybe it would have passed the sniff test and maybe these are just kind of headlines. We don't know, right? So unless Sharon or someone else explains more, we may never know. All we may know is that during a very intense and scary part of Sharon's life, about $18 million of Sharon's is missing. To me, I think that brings up a really important issue to talk about here on Legal Tea. I referenced it at the beginning of this episode that I wanted to share some of my general thoughts as an estate and elder law attorney who routinely helps folks as they age and possibly suffer health events like Sharon did. So we're going to shift to that topic now in this episode. There are three things. Sorry, I forgot to turn my speaker on my laptop off. There are three general things I want to hit on at this point, and they are, first, when you proactively plan and get an estate plan put in place, that puts you in the driver's seat and not someone else like the court. Second, along those same lines, when you do your estate plan, you need to think long and hard about who goes where, and we'll get into that more in a second. And third, if someone surprises you and misbehaves, then what? So let's hit on each one. First, when you proactively plan and get an estate plan in place, that puts you in the driver's seat and not someone else like the court. I've talked about this before here on Legal Tea. Eventually, whether it's due to incapacity or death, you will need someone to take the baton and deal with your legal affairs, financial decisions, and healthcare decisions. While living, that would be what's called a healthcare power of attorney or a financial power of attorney. And after death, it would be an executor through a will or an executor appointed by the court if you did not have a will, or a trustee of a trust. The point here is someone, right? Someone is going to have to work on your behalf and make decisions for you eventually. Doing an estate plan allows you to be put in the driver's seat on who that is. If you do not pick who, then it is possible the court will have to get involved and pick who for you. I'm not sure about you, but I don't love the idea of the court doing anything for me, let alone who is going to make healthcare, financial, or legal decisions for me. So as I always tell people, doing an estate plan allows you to be put in the driver's seat, and not doing an estate plan puts you in the back seat without a good view of the road at all, and maybe actually puts you in the trunk if we're going to stick with this analogy. Second, along the same lines of what we just talked about, when you do your estate plan, think long and hard about who goes where. And what do I mean by this? Well, let me be loud and clear. It does not have to be the oldest. Heck, it doesn't even have to be a child at all. You should think long and hard about who will do the best job at making healthcare decisions for you, who will do the best job at managing financial affairs, and who will be the best person to be the one in charge after you pass away. And you should truly evaluate someone and someone's skill set, for example. Are they good with money and keeping bills afloat? Can they remain calm under pressure if it's, healthcare decisions? Are they punctual and organized, or are they the kind that will just let mold grow on things? You should also consider someone's location. Is that the only factor? No, but it's good to factor into the decision. You should also consider everyone's relationships. So say that, kids, generally don't get along. So maybe you should consider not putting any of them in charge down the road and maybe doing like a third party or a professional. Also, kind of on this whole topic, that's what I mean about thinking long and hard. It should not be quick, oh, it's just John because he's the oldest. Truly give it some thought and be sure you are putting people in charge of things that will do the best for you and be the best choice when all things are considered. Third and lastly, on the things I wanted to briefly share some thoughts on, what happens if someone surprises us, surprises all of us, and misbehaves? And by that, I mean, they do something bad, like they steal from you, or they don't act in your own best interest. That unfortunately happens. And me saying it does not happen is flat not true. Sometimes the people we appoint in some of these roles end up turning into someone we never knew existed. Money is on the table, and sometimes things go awry. So a couple thoughts on this. First, consider putting some provisions into your documents that maybe have the person in charge be required to provide accountings to others, like their siblings or other beneficiaries, meaning that every year or whatever duration that you want, they have to provide like a written accounting of everything that has come into your name, like income, for example, and everything that has come out of your name from bills and expenses. That will put some checks and balances into place for you and for everyone. Another thing along these lines is bad actors can be held accountable through litigation. And sure, I get it, litigation is not fun, it is not ideal. Though there are no other alternatives if you really think about on getting something like this addressed. I guess everyone could go in one room and like fight it out or go in one room and kumbaya. Either that's probably not going to happen, or at the very least, it may not and very likely would not be successful. So unfortunately, sometimes if the harm is bad enough, litigation maybe should be commenced against the bad actor. And there are attorneys that will help explore, options as to whether someone has done something so bad and so egregious that warrants a lawsuit against them. So just know that if you notice something wonky, you can put action behind your complaining and attempt to make things right, or as right as possible for whatever the bad actor did. And unfortunately, like I said, this stuff does happen sometimes, and it's a shame. It's a terrible, terrible thing. But just know there are options that an estate litigation attorney can help someone explore. Alrighty, let's wrap this episode up. Next week, my friends, we're back to the celebrity estate planning type of episode. And during those types of episodes, we dive into a celebrity or kind of big name person that has passed away. And we go into how their estate looked from like either an estate planning perspective or just what happened after they passed away. Next week's episode is about Muhammad Ali, a name most, if not all, should know. As I've blabbed about before on here, sometimes I feel like I'm like running out of celebrities to talk about on here. Well, I was talking to my dad recently. Hi, Dad. And he was like, hey, have you ever done an episode on Muhammad Ali? And I was like, no, I'll have to add it to my podcast calendar. So here we are, Dad, and here we are, Legal Tea listeners. Be sure to tune in to that next week. Talk to you then, and